Welcome into the Sports Hub Patriots Podcast. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff with you. Not a training camp edition. Shout out to Tim for the new graphic down below. We are on to the regular season, Matt Dolloff, with roster cuts. And here we go. It was funny. I was talking to somebody the other day who's covering the team for the first time. I was like, training camp, what a grind. I'm so glad it's over. I was like, we're just getting started. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, now is when it gets started.
Right, now's the grind. The training camp's the fun part.
Yeah.
Now the real games start. Now it's real stuff.
So of course,
they better buckle up, whoever that was.
I told him that transition is marked by the initial 53-man roster, which, by the way, I kind of hate the whole initial 53-man roster thing. I do think it's important. I do think there is some you can take away from it, but very few teams, if any, ever play a single game with their initial 53-man roster. The Patriots are already off of theirs. Tyquan Thornton's on IR. That spot will get filled before week one. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But there's probably a couple other moves coming as well. That all being said, it is kind of that foundation, the starting point. You get a general idea. So we'll talk about, for the next half an hour or so, we're going to talk about the moves Patriots made, they didn't made, maybe what we think is coming next. And let's start with the big one, Matt. Our pets' heads are falling off. The Patriots have kept one quarterback. Who's ever seen such a thing except anybody who followed the team in 2021 or even in 2020 when they kept no kickers? This is what they do. It's how Belichick manipulates these new roster rules with the practice squad elevations. They will have a backup quarterback on game day. Maybe it'll be Bailey Zappi. Maybe it'll be somebody else, but they will have somebody. And once they burn all those elevations, they will sign another quarterback to the 53-man roster. No, this is not, maybe it is a little bit of Belichick thinking he's smarter than everybody else by manipulating the practice squad rules, but they don't plan on playing a game with one dressed quarterback, which, by the way, they've also done. Also would not be unprecedented. And that quarterback had a torn ligament in his throwing thumb. Shout out Jacoby Brissett for beating the Texans. Right. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because I get so in the weeds that I'm not fazed by this. None of this felt weird to me. There was one little element of it that bothered me. We'll get to that, but I don't want to say it wasn't a surprise. I had two quarterbacks on my roster projection, but people are acting like the aliens landed, and it's really not that out of the norm for them to do something like this.
Is that how it's going on X right now? Is that what half of New England is acting?
I think now people have settled down as we record this Thursday morning, but like Tuesday afternoon, people were losing it.
I mean, like, yeah, if you have to give an instant reaction, I guess, might as well say everything the Patriots are doing is bad and stupid.
We have a show to do today, Dolph.
We got to tweet right now, Barth. I mean, I don't know. I have to get my opinion out there right now. I can't wait. I can't wait a day. Yeah. No, there's definitely an element of Bill Belichick at least like looking at new rules, any kind of rule changes and saying, well, how can we exploit the hell out of this? How can we exploit this to the absolute highest degree? So like he's taken full advantage of the new practice squad rules with keeping veterans there. Brian Hoyer was up and down from the practice squad for a couple of years, wasn't he? Right. Like ever since they've done that,
it was the same thing they're doing right now.
Yeah, so like you can only have up to 6 guys, I think, that have more than 2 years of accrued experience. So like you can have 6 veterans on your practice squad, and they got Ty Montgomery on there right now. There's one more. James Ferentz, I think, is the other one. That's maybe the only other one. I forget if there was another veteran on there, but yeah, it's usually young guys.
I guess Pharaoh Brown kind of counts.
Yeah, no, Pharaoh Brown counts. Yeah, he's had more than 2 years. So yeah, no, like ever since they've allowed him to put veterans on the practice squad, he's taken full advantage of that. So I'm not surprised about any of that stuff. And yeah, like the whole initial 53-man roster, and I talked about this, by the way, on my podcast with Ty Anderson, the Sports Hub Underground. I'm wearing the hat for that very show.
You got to point at the hat because my hat just says Boston.
This is the Sports Hub Underground hat.
Try to coordinate.
I don't have any other copies at the moment, but let me know if you want one. We can figure that out. Get that at 985thesportshub.com, the Sports Hub app. But I talked about this with Ty yesterday, and I feel like I talked about this with you a little bit in private. The only reason that they even do this, it feels like, is just for, clicks, media stuff, TV ratings, stuff for people to talk about. Like, I feel like there should be a way that you don't have to name guys to the roster, then put them on IR. I feel like there's got to be a way to like just name guys to IR before you name your initial roster, and then everything's a little simpler than that. So I see no advantage to it other than like we get another day of tweets and reports and clicks and media and TV eyeballs and all that stuff. So I don't know if there's a solution, if there's something that would make sense, or if there's something like, I know no matter what they would do, the teams are going to exploit it. Bill Belichick, obviously. But yeah, like
so no team would ever cut anybody. You would just put players on IR, and then if you need them later in the year, you'd activate them.
Well, no, like you put a limit on it. You can't just put like everybody on IR with a designation to return. You can do up to 3 or whatever it is. So, like, I think either way you're gonna have tough decisions, but this just seems like added steps that aren't really necessary to me. So, like, that's why the initial like roster, I'm not surprised by much of what the Patriots did, and like I'm not gonna overreact to what the roster looks like right now because it's not gonna be what it looks like even like a couple days from now, next week.
I will give one take that will annoy people on how they handle the quarterback. I think people don't realize this. You don't outright somebody to the practice squad. They go through waivers, and then you play. If they're a vested veteran, more than 4 years, you can cut them and sign them clean. But even then, when you cut or waive a player like that, even if you bring them back on the practice squad, that player was still cut. The contract is voided. So Bailey Zappi no longer on a rookie deal. He is now on a 1-year practice squad contract. Now, if they sign him to the active roster, if they sign him to the 53, maybe they agree on terms to a multi-year deal, but it's not going to be his rookie contract anymore. So they're at a point now where Bailey Zappi might be a free agent this offseason. He'd be an exclusive rights free agent where he really would only be able to sign with the Patriots, but that's still another person you have to negotiate with. You probably end up paying him more than you were going to had you not done this. So that's why I'm always very hesitant when people look at rookies. Just cut him, bring him back on the practice squad. It's not always about this year. Like I talked about this a lot with Isaiah Bolden. Now they got him on IR, so this didn't end up mattering, and his rookie contract still intact. But he's a guy that I think has some upside at the cornerback position. I think he has some real upside there. But he clearly wasn't ready this season before he got hurt. Like he was going to be at the bottom of the depth chart. Project player, probably would have been a healthy scratch. So people are like, just put him on the practice squad. Well, if you do that, you burn that rookie contract. And now let's say he does, and this is a good problem to have, but it's a problem. Let's say he does become a legit outside corner. Well, now at the end of year 3, you got to go through the whole RFA process with him. And you're probably going to end up paying a lot more money than you probably needed to. And it's not a cheap thing. It's a roster building thing. That's a premium position. You're going to end up spending a lot of money on a player you didn't need to, and you can spend that money elsewhere. Whether or not they would actually spend that money, I know some people would push back on me and say they wouldn't. But yeah, so that's the one thing that annoyed me. Like, who got the spot? They did this to get who on the roster? That's what I wonder. Was it to save Amir Speed's rookie contract and get him on? Maybe. Was it to get, one of the guys they traded for on? Was it to get, I don't necessarily know who the player is that we're looking at that, we had to keep this guy over Bailey Zappi. And I feel like I'm missing somebody that maybe fits, but, there were no players that I really looked at. I was like, oh, you could have just cut that guy. You could have, practice squatted that guy instead.
Yeah, I mean, well, they got the 2 tackles right before they had to name the final roster. So I guess those are guys that you're not just going to cut right after you got them. So I guess maybe that complicated things. So I don't know. Like, that's the only one I think of. But it's interesting that you mentioned Amir Speed because, initially I was a little surprised that he made the initial 53-man roster. And I think I had the same thought process that you were just poo-pooing a second ago. Where it's like, well, they could just cut him and bring him back on the practice squad. Nobody's gonna claim him off waivers at this point. But you got a good point there that maybe they just wanted to preserve that rookie contract, keep him under contract for the 3-4 years, whatever it is.
But again, I would rather have Bailey Zappi's rookie contract than Amir Speed's.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, Barth. I feel like I've heard nobody else say that because the general feeling that I got just from seeing whatever reactions I saw, whether it's on TV or Twitter or whatever, is that Bailey Zappi should be upset because he lost a lot of money. So you're saying that Bailey Zappi might actually make more money out of this. If he stays, he signs to the roster, and then they want to keep him and he gets to negotiate. You think he could actually have a better deal than his rookie deal?
Maybe, but he did lose guaranteed money. Like he does have none of that's guaranteed. There's no maybe back up this year and he continues to struggle with Bill O'Brien's offense and they move on from him. Like he could have lost a ton of money. He might end up making it back on the other end, but he did for sure. As the great Marcus Vick once said, it's all about that guaranteed money. And that's
if they have to, they could come up with some kind of make good on that.
They
guarantee
can.
Something.
And here's the take I always get in trouble for, because with Bailey Zappi, you either have to say that he is better than Mac Jones and should be the starter, or he's trash and doesn't belong in the league. And people have wildly swung back and forth between those two takes, like single people. My take has been the same since I first said the Patriots should draft him in October of 2021. Bailey Zappi is a high-level backup in the NFL. That is what he will be. He is somewhere between the 30th and 40th best quarterback in the league. He could be like one of the worst starters, but he's probably one of the better backups. That's where I have him. Now, neither side wants to hear that. The Zappy people don't want to hear that, and the anti-Zappy people don't want to hear that.
Yeah, here's my take on.
But I still think that just real quick. Sorry, I still think that's what he is. He's a backup. He's a good backup quarterback. It's good to have a good backup quarterback. I would have kept him.
Yeah, I mean, well, they did end up keeping him, so I guess it all works out in the end as long as they can keep that relationship intact and all that. My take on Zappi hasn't really changed, even though he had a really bad camp. Like I said in the offseason, I want to see some kind of competition. I want to see Zappi try to push Mac Jones. I think he deserves that. And he didn't live up to it. He had a terrible camp, and Mac Jones had, not like an unbelievable camp, like surefire, like we know what he is. Like we still don't really know what Mac Jones is. But Mac Jones was clearly better than Bailey Zappi, and he was clearly the starter, and that's how the team treated it, and that's clearly how the team views him. And I think like the fact that they cut Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham sort of does signify, whether it was intentional or not, that they're putting a lot on Mac Jones. So Mac Jones was clearly the starter, and Bailey Zappi was clearly the backup. And so, like, yeah, I've conceded that Bailey Zappi is a backup. I don't know if maybe he could develop into something a little better than that, but I think my general take on him hasn't really changed, which is not that he's the same kind of player, but he could have a similar career. Case Keenum is the guy I keep pointing to. Not terribly impressive with his physical tools or anything like that, but a smart player, and he's got enough poise to make some plays, and he's generally a backup, but maybe he could have a pretty good run as a starter, where it's like we get Zappy fever for a year when he's on another team. You know what I mean? He goes to like the Minnesota Vikings or whatever, like Case Keenum did, and all of a sudden, he has a great year, and like, here we go. Maybe Zappy is something, but then he just sort of regresses back to the mean, which is a pretty good backup. That's what he is, but that's still something I want to keep around. Like they didn't have to start over there, so they were obviously willing to do that, which I think is sort of a vote of confidence in Mac Jones to be the guy for this year at least, and maybe next year long term, we'll see. But Bailey Zappi's definitely a backup quarterback because he just doesn't have the physical tools to be a starter. That's just what he is.
At the end of the day, they were okay losing him, and they didn't. Yeah. And the risk worked out, and that's because they know what they're doing. But you never know for sure that you're not going to lose a guy. Bill has said this when you put him on waivers. You never know for sure. They were okay losing him. If they were really thinking there's a chance he was going to start even early in the season, they would not have risked losing him. I'll say that right now. I think it's more about Mac Jones' job security in anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this tells Mac Jones that you're the guy. Like Zappy isn't even close to taking over. We would consider it like a borderline emergency if you got hurt and we had to put Zappy in. Right. That's how they feel about it from my read.
Which is how the heavy majority of backup quarterbacks are viewed around the league. That's not like
right.
Zappy or that's anybody.
The whole thing. It's like, how can we overreact to this when like every other team in the AFC East, first of all, would be screwed if they lose their starting quarterback? Maybe Zach Wilson has figured something out with the Jets.
I was going to say maybe the Dolphins. Mike White. I don't think the gap between Tua and Mike White's all that big.
That's true. Yeah, but they got two backups then.
Yeah. If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. All right, let's move on from the quarterbacks here. We did the first 15 minutes almost on quarterbacks. Running backs. They've kept at least 4, all but one of the last 10 years. And that 1 year was 3. They've now kept 2. This is very thin for them. Now, they do have a roster spot open with Tyquan Thornton going on IR, so this is one of those spots where I wonder if you see a player signed. I do think it's interesting that Ty Montgomery's back and not J.J. Taylor. And Karen Garrigan reported earlier this week that J.J. Taylor didn't want to come back on the practice squad. He wanted a fresh start. Basically, he wanted somewhere he could go and play, and good for him after he had a really good summer. I wonder if I wonder if they thought at all about bringing him back on the 53, because having him be that third running back in this setup would have made a lot of sense. Kevin Harris is an emergency option at this point. He's way too redundant to Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott. He doesn't bring any skill set that those two guys don't already have. I like Ty Montgomery, but he's inconsistent. He's not always available. And I think the practice squad is a perfect spot for him. You don't burn a roster spot, then he gets hurt in a couple weeks. And I do think he'll play. I do think he'll be an early elevation, if not week 1, some other point early in the season. But I would have liked to see them try to get JJ Taylor in that third spot. That being said, Ty Montgomery is exciting when he's on the field, and I'm kind of hoping he ends up being that third back on game days.
Yeah, I mean, he had an exciting summer last year, so we were excited. It's like maybe they get more out of Ty Montgomery than most of his other teams did in his career. But then, the harsh reality has set in for Ty Montgomery each of his first 2 seasons here, which is that he just can't stay on the field. He can't stay healthy. So, I mean, that's going to be a concern throughout the season. Who knows if he's going to keep it together. And like that is, I'm just a little surprised that JJ Taylor's not here too. But at the same time, I don't blame him for wanting to get another opportunity somewhere else. He's been here, 3-4 years now. And he's like, all right, enough. If someone wants to sign me and I can play, I'm going to go there. So I don't blame him for that. JJ Taylor might be another guy that you might not be able to hold up physically because he's just so small. So, I mean, they've sort of put themselves in that position by, they traded Pierre Strong. And now they have to depend on this guy this Ty Montgomery, who's never really stayed healthy for a full season. And so I might be more surprised that they moved on from Pierre Strong and they were okay moving on from Kevin Harris if they had to. Like to get rid of those guys so quickly, both of them, was a little surprising to me. So I am glad that they kept Kevin Harris back in the practice squad because, look, he didn't show much this summer, but I feel like he's got enough that you can keep him around instead of signing someone else where there's all that uncertainty or if there's a veteran that doesn't really have it anymore. I'd rather stay the course with Harris. So, yeah, I'm a little surprised, but at the same time, it sounds like JJ Taylor wants to play somewhere else. And you just got to hope that this running back room can keep it together health-wise.
I just wonder if the door's still open for Taylor. Like if it's all nice and good to say, I want to go play somewhere else. And then,
right.
The phone doesn't ring.
Right. That's a classic Patriots situation. The amount of guys they've let, yeah, sure, go explore free agency. And then they end up coming back here. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens with Taylor either.
What's the meme with I'm not with Thanos, right? It brought you back to me or something.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'm not an Avengers guy.
No, the Thanos meme I know is when he's just resting at the end of the day after he destroys half the world. That's the Thanos meme to me.
There's one where it's like you did something and look where it brought you back to me. Like that's Bill Belichick,
yeah,
right?
That's like at least one free agent every year, it seems.
So I hope the door's still open for JJ Taylor, but you could do a lot worse than Ramondre Stevenson, Ezekiel Elliott, Ty Montgomery. If that group stays healthy, I think that's actually a really strong room. Big if they stay healthy. Mm-hmm. But if they do, I think they have some talent there. Wide receiver, no surprise. They kept all 6. Kayshon Boutte didn't really give him an option there late in camp. We knew the other 5 were staying. Tyquan obviously to IR now, but solid group. We'll see. I don't really have any takes on it. I feel like nothing's changed from before cuts the way we view this wide receiver room.
Yeah, no. I mean, just the way the 2 rookies have played has been exciting because 6th round picks, who knows what they're gonna do? Who knows what they're gonna look like in camp? So the fact that Demario Douglas and especially Kayshon, but I'm more of a Boutte guy these days because he's an outside threat.
You're Boutte man.
Yeah, I'm a Boutte. I like Boutte, and I cannot lie.
We're gonna have to get you an ass man license plate.
Seriously, Mr. Boutte over here. But yeah, the fact that he's an outside threat has me excited, and he's a little bit bigger, and Douglas. He looks really good, and I don't think he's gonna. I think he's gonna work out. I think he's gonna be good, but he's more of a slot guy, gadget player type of thing. I know you said they'll use him on plays where they used Marcus Jones last year, so that'll be good. But I want to see what Boutte can do. It might be tough for him to get on the field right now, but who knows what the veterans, if they can all stay healthy or if they have enough in terms of speed, separation, all that stuff. So maybe they can get pushed by the rookies. But yeah, no surprises in terms of who they have on the roster. And I'm a little more excited than I was at the start of camp because the 2 rookies have played so well, and I feel like that's a group that could surprise people this year.
I think so too. You had was it Kyle Brandt on NFL Network had Demario Douglas as one of his breakout players. He's like, I never do rookies, but
Peter Schrager, maybe?
Peter Schrager, yeah, it was Peter Schrager. Was like, yeah, I never put rookies on here, but I know he's a part of the offensive game plan, and said not 1,000 yards, but he'll be a guy that people know.
Yeah,
so I think that was that clip was interesting. It was a very interesting clip.
Look, if Juju Smith-Schuster gets hurt, Douglas is in. He's going to be the slot receiver. So we'll see.
I think if any of those top three guys get hurt, it's Douglas is configured in somewhere somehow. I think he's
next
the
man
next
up.
guy up. Kendrick Bourne's versatility kind of allows them to do that.
Yeah.
Tight ends, same thing. Not really surprised that they only kept two. I know some people were high on Anthony Ferkser late in the preseason. He didn't even make the practice squad. Matt Sokol does as kind of the blocking tight end option. You also have Pharaoh Brown, big dude, 6'5", 260. Jeez. 6'5", 260. Matt's all hot and bothered thinking about a 360-pound tight end.
Big boy.
Have you seen the 480-pound offensive lineman for TCU?
I think you sent him to me. Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna do a mock draft his year coming out. You're just gonna trade all the picks to take him first overall. That's gonna be it.
Yeah, it goes Caleb Williams, the big boy, and then
Can he skate? Else. That's what Matt Dolloff wants to know. Can he skate?
Can he play defense? Is he a left shot?
So not super surprised about the tight end room. This is another position where I think you could totally see elevations, especially week one, getting some help for, and we'll get to the offensive line, but getting some help for whoever ends up at right tackle, whether that is Matt Sokol, whether that is Pharaoh Brown. They essentially have 4 weeks now of blocking tight ends without having to use a 53-man roster spot. So not super surprised. If there is one thing I would say, the fact they didn't add anybody else tells me that Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry, who got hurt the last couple of weeks, both should be good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that they just went forward with Henry and Gesicki as their 2 guys on the main roster and nobody else signifies to me that they're both going to be ready for week 1. So that's a good sign. Matt Sokol was a guy that I was always picking to be their third guy, if they needed one, whether it was on practice squad or whatever. And I actually meant to say this with the running backs, but it works with the tight ends too, where it's like, this is Bill Belichick taking full advantage of the practice squad, the expanded practice squad, being able to have veterans on it. And so he puts Pharaoh Brown on there. He puts Ty Montgomery on there. So I imagine we'll see those guys elevated at some point. Sokol might have been the best overall blocker out of the tight end group. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get elevated as soon as week 1, especially against that Eagles pass rush. And Pharaoh Brown, I believe, I could be wrong, but Pharaoh Brown might have been a guy that burned the Patriots back in that 20. Didn't they lose to the Texans in 2020 with Candy or what? Am I thinking 2019 maybe?
Was he? I'm going to look it up because they will do this. They sign the guys that burn them.
Yeah, I feel like I could be getting the games mixed up. I'm not sure if Bill O'Brien was there. I guess that's sort of my point. Is that
I think Bill O'Brien had been fired at that point.
Did he take a year off before Alabama? Is that what he did?
Well, he got fired midway through the 2020 season.
Okay. Not to derail the podcast, but I'm pretty sure Pharaoh Brown had a good game against the Patriots.
2 catches for 22 yards. It was their other tight end. I'm remembering this.
The other tight end. Jordan something?
Jordan Atkins. 5
Jordan
catches
Atkins.
for 83 yards.
Okay. All right. Sorry to derail the podcast, but no, Bill O'Brien guy. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense. So, like, I'm not surprised they brought him in. They obviously want, they want more depth in terms of pass catching, clearly, because maybe they don't feel great about Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki's ability to stay healthy throughout the season. I know Henry's had 2 good healthy seasons, but both these guys have histories of getting banged up. So good to have a third catching option, but I feel like Sokol's the guy we'll see more often out of those tight ends as far as elevations and stuff.
Okay. Let's talk about this offensive line.
Oh boy.
Let's back up because this is a lot. They kept 11 offensive linemen.
And we're breaking down each and every one of them one by one. No.
So they usually keep 8 or 9. There's been a few years where they've kept 10. 11 is a lot. Because if you think about it, you have your starting 5. You usually have a backup guard. Both sides can play both spots. Mm-hmm. You try to have a swing tackle, so that's 7. If you don't have a swing tackle, that gets you to 8 because you need 2 tackles. And then maybe your guard can't play center. You have another center. Maybe there's just a project draft pick you're stashing. That's usually the breakdown. Usually 7 to 9, 9's on the high side. They kept 11. They had to. They handcuffed themselves into this. There are some guys that, outside of extenuating circumstances, I don't think make the team. Vidarian Lowe, let me start with this. Vidarian Lowe is a guy who should have made this team. I wanted them to draft Vidarian Lowe a year ago. I think he is very much their kind of offensive lineman. I think he has upside for a 6th-round pick. I'm glad they got him. I don't know that Tyrone Wheatley would have made the team had he been here all of camp. I know he had a good summer with the Browns, but he hasn't done a lot in the NFL. And for what they need guys who can potentially make an immediate impact. Mm-hmm. He's more of a project player.
Right. Sorry, finish.
City So did not have a great summer, but He's a recent draft pick. And look, I just said, sometimes there's guys you keep that are project players that you keep on the roster, and that's just what you do. That's part of, every team does it as part of building an NFL roster. They have 4 of those guys or 3 of those guys on the offensive line. I think Antonio Mafi's ready. He can play. But they took 3 offensive linemen in the top 150. You don't cut top 150 picks as a rookie. It's very rare. So the way they drafted, they handcuffed themselves. Those were 3 guys they had to keep, none of whom are going to start. They then traded for 2 more. And like you said earlier in the pod, those are guys you're going to keep, and even if they're not going to start. So that's 5 backups they're keeping now to begin with, plus the 5 starters. And then the 11th player is essentially
you're kind of losing me with the arithmetic here.
The 11th player is Riley Reif, who got hurt. So, all right.
Yes.
4 concrete starters they were keeping, which is Brown, David Andrews, Mike Onwenu, Cole Strange. Those guys. And yes, you're keeping your 4 starters. You're keeping the 3 rookies. Now you're at 8. You traded for 2 guys right before cuts. You're keeping them. That's 10. And then Riley Reif might be the 5th starter. They paid him a lot of money. You're keeping him as, like, he was never getting cut. So a guy like Jason Hines, I thought, had a good summer, and they probably could have used him, but they were already keeping, there were 11 guys they were keeping, period. So you're going to keep 12? Like, he was out the door. I wonder if they would have liked to have Cody Russi on the active roster. I thought he had a good summer. Yeah. But there wasn't room. And this overflows to some other positions too. Again, if you're keeping 11 offensive linemen, 2 more than what's generally the maximum, that's how you end up with 2 running backs. That's how you end up with 2 tight ends. That's how you end up with 1 quarterback. That's how you end up with 4 safeties, and Joshua Bledsoe ends up on the outside looking in. So I wasn't surprised, but they kind of did this to themselves. This was a spot where they were going to have to be overly stocked at the position, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, look again. They made the 2 trades right before the final roster was set. So I mean, like it's not even that they handcuffed themselves from the start. It's like they put themselves in this position in the last couple days. You know what I mean? They could have. Well,
even at 9, they were already kind of at that maximum number.
That's what I'm saying. They could have just gone with that, but that signifies to me that they just don't feel great about their tackle room, particularly right tackle. But again, like Riley Reif, we still expect him to go on injured reserve, do we not? So like,
I thought he was. I called him a candidate to go on. I was kind of 50-50 on that one. The Tyquan Thornton thing, because I pre-write stuff just so we're ahead on news, just in case. I figured there's a chance Tyquan Thornton was going on. I wrote that, didn't include Riley Reif in it because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so like it's a little odd that they got those 2 extra tackles. It's like, and then why are you keeping everyone? Why are you keeping all these guys? I thought if they got those 2 tackles, I thought maybe they're moving on from a Calvin Anderson or even Riley Reif or something like that, or just Reif going on IR. So
Calvin Anderson was the 11th guy. That's how I messed up. That's how
I didn't want to stop you, but you definitely said 4 + 3 = 8 earlier. So
yeah, I did. I'm not good at this. Is the Felgren math rule. Don't do math on the air. So and they were always
Hub Patriots Podcast math.
Once they activated Calvin Anderson, they didn't need to activate Calvin Anderson from NFI, except they probably wanted to because they felt they need him right away. So that's how you get to 11. I think they could have made one of the 2 trades. If they wanted to trade Pierre Strong, that's a separate conversation. If you were going to trade Pierre Strong because you felt you were done with him, I would have given him another year. I think he could have been that 3rd running back. But if they were done with him, and I have my theories why, I wrote about them on 985thesportshub.com. If they were done with him, so be it. I don't think you needed to trade him for a tackle and then go out and trade for Fedarian Lowe. I would have traded him for a pick, or see if you can go get like a tight end. Maybe you go to the Broncos, who are, moving on from Alberto, and you make that swap or something like that. I didn't love that trade. I don't think they needed to make both of those tackle trades.
Yeah, well, it tells me that they were going to just cut Pierre Strong, but so they might as well look around the league to see if anyone would be willing to make a player swap. So I look at Wheatley as a guy that, like, they'll look at him for a little bit, and he might not be here very long. So and you're down to 10, and then Riley Reif goes on IR, and you're down to 9, and so maybe the picture becomes a little more clear. But right now, after making those 2 trades, and especially Wheatley, he's the one that's like a converted defensive end to tight end, now trying to play tackle. Like, that's the guy who's a project that hasn't really played tackle that long. So like, that one's interesting to me. I don't know how patient they're gonna be with that one. But Fedarian Lowe, like a guy that was on your draft board last year, so that's a guy I'm intrigued by. But right now, like, it seems like I put Calvin Anderson in the league to start the season at right tackle, and Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. Again, like we don't want to overreact to the initial 53-man roster, but it's a little wild that they went with 11 offensive linemen and make both of those trades. It seems a little excessive even for a position where they're trying to look for answers.
Well, here's the thing, and I gave that whole spiel at the beginning about how I don't always believe in the initial reacting to the initial 53-man so strongly. I think there's a chance they carry 11 offensive linemen for a couple of weeks. Like you said, maybe Tyron Wheatley's not here for the full season, but if Riley Reif's not going on IR, they're not cutting any of those guys before week 1. And then you see what it looks like. And then if it's a mess, you need to keep them all to try something else week 2. I think it should be Mike Onwenu at right tackle to start the season, Antonio Mafi at right guard. That's what I'd want to see. If they're not going to do that, I'm with you. I think Calvin Anderson or Riley Reif, if he's healthy, right guard. If they're not moving Mike Onwenu out to right guard or to right tackle, then yeah, I'm with you on Calvin Anderson.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you on the Mafi thing because that you always talk about get your best 5 on the field. I think Mafi's had that good of a summer that like maybe it doesn't say much about the veterans that they brought in, the signings and all that. He might be the top 5 offensive lineman on the team right now. He played both guard spots. So like I'd be comfortable putting him at right guard right now. And Michael Onwenu, we saw play good at right tackle as a rookie. So yeah, I'm on board with that idea. And like I wouldn't be surprised if they did keep the 10 or 11 for a while because like look at all these pass rushes they're facing in the first month of the season. Obviously the Eagles on opening night. You don't want to sleep on the Cowboys front 7 with Micah Parsons and the Jets. The Jets have Quinn and Williams. They have a good front. Miami has guys that names escape me, Bradley Chubb, but like they have good pass. Like they're facing good defensive fronts in the first month of the season. That's going to be the biggest challenge for them to overcome. I would still predict that they win at least 1 or 2 games in September, but like that's the biggest challenge for them. And so maybe that's their thought process is that we need to have as many bodies as possible. So if it's not going well out there and we need to put an extra tackle out there, or we just need to try someone else, like they want to have as many options as possible. That's what it feels like anyway.
A lot of beef.
Yeah, a lot of beef. A lot of meat.
On the defense line, I just realized too, usually when you do the roster recap show, you actually read who's at each position. So if you want to follow along 31 minutes in the podcast, 985thesportshub.com, Matt did meet the Patriots initial roster. Yes, defensive line, solid group. The one thing I'd like to see them add another nose tackle some way, somehow, even if it's on the practice squad. They don't have really anybody behind Devon Gottschalk. Maybe Jeremiah Farms if he comes back with that one open practice squad spot. I'd like to see him called Danny Shelton. Got cut by the Chiefs. He's only 30 before people freak out at me and say he's too old. He's only 30, which did surprise me. But yeah, I wonder if they try to, we know they wanted another nose tackle. They tried to send Marquand McCall a couple weeks ago, and then he failed his physical. But that'd be my one thing on the defensive line. I don't think it's make or break, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had another defensive tackle at some point in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, Mark Daniels reported that Jeremiah Farms signed to the practice squad, but then he wasn't on the initial announcement from the team. So I don't know if something happened there, or if it's taking a little more time to sign him, or maybe they want to sign to the roster and then sign someone else. I don't know what's going on there. But there's no defensive lineman on the practice squad right now. So I expect that open spot to be filled by a defensive lineman, whether it's Jeremiah Farms or whatever. But yeah, nose tackle is one that I'm looking at too. It's like the configuration of the line is going to look a lot different this year. Just taking Carl Davis out of the equation, and like not that Carl Davis played every snap or anything like that, but he always played the nose. Basically, he played either directly over the center or just shaded a little bit to the left or right. That's what he was every single time he was on the field, whether it was run or pass. So they got to replace those snaps, and like that, I think that's for time. They hope Marquand McCall would be a guy that could do that, and maybe Jeremiah Farms is a guy that they would, be a little comfortable with him doing that, even just limited snaps. But right now, it seems like Devon Gottschalk is going to be their nose tackle, and who's going to be the 3 technique and the 5 technique on to either side of them. Like that's an interesting question. But yeah, no, I like the group. I really like Keon White, and like I hope Christian Barmore could take another step forward. That's going to be interesting to see for this defense, where they already had a good pass rush last year, but it was mostly from the linebackers, Matt Judon, Josh Uche, and Jawan Bentley in spots when it lines up for him, can rush the passer a little bit, blitz, stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting if they can get a real push, a real pass rush from specifically the defensive line and maybe directly up the middle. I think that could make a huge difference for them. So I'm interested to see how they deploy that group and who else they add.
Linebackers, no real surprises there. Kind of what we expected. Mac Wilson ends up making the team. I think he was the one guy that people were maybe 50-50 on, but it's pretty much the same group as last year with Marte Mapu. added.
Yep.
And I guess Chris Board will play a little bit too, but feel good about it. Feel good about the linebacker group. I don't know. I feel like that has been, we have talked very little about the linebackers this summer for good reason. It's the same group it was last year. They've all pretty much played well. Marte Mapu's looked good, and nothing's changed. There's been nothing noteworthy, I feel like, with the linebackers in a good way pretty much since the spring.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just technically speaking, but this might be their best linebacker group since the Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy group. You know, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the boogeyman.
I'm not saying this is the boogeyman or anything. Not that the boogeyman had a good finish that year. But yeah, look, Juwan Bentley, I think he keeps getting better. He's getting better every single year, and maybe he tops out, plateaus at some point, but good player, defensive leader. I like him a lot. Marte Mapu, like you mentioned, like I have him listed with the linebackers. He has played a lot of safety type of roles, so he's probably going to be a hybrid. But like he'll probably be a linebacker in a lot of different situations. Play in the box, over the middle, things like that. And yeah, Mac Wilson's a guy that I hope can take a step forward. He had, I thought, sort of an up and down camp. He flashed a little bit, so hopefully he can make more plays in the passing game. And Mapu, I think, has great potential as a sideline to sideline type of linebacker that can close on you from any point on the field. That's been a big thing these days. Linebackers that can defend every blade of grass, as the saying goes. So I feel like the Patriots have sort of lacked those type of running backs. They've had running backs that can play really well, within the box, within the line, and things like that. But they need to have guys that can play other parts of the field. So Mapu has a lot of potential there. So yeah, no, I like their linebacker group more than the last couple of years for sure.
At cornerback, the question is, do they need another boundary guy? Because there's still, John Jones has been hurt. I feel like at this point, Jack Jones has to play week 1. They can't suspend him this late, right? Now that this is all gone down. And then there's Christian Gonzalez, but on Amir Speed, it's interesting to me when the Patriots announced the initial roster on Twitter, they did that like pick your character thing. So it's like all the headshots of the players, and
like Street Fighter.
All the offensive players had red behind them. All the defensive players had blue behind them, and the specialists had white, gray, something. But so that was like, Bryce Behringer, Chad Ryland, Joe Cardona, Matthew Slater, also Amir Speed. So I would like to sit here and say Amir Speed is their emergency depth at boundary corner. I wonder if they just see him as a special teamer and he's just not going to play defense.
Yeah, I mean, like Isaiah Bolden seemed to be that guy until he got hurt, which is unfortunate. But right. I'm not sure Speed is going to see much time on the field at defense. I think he's going to be a gunner. He'll be something like that. He is fast. He lives up to his last name. So I feel like that he will be a core special teamer, but I just don't see him being out there on defense. And that's also evidence of that is that Shaun Wade is on the roster. They still have Shaun Wade. He's been sticking around, even though he's had a hard time, actually being active on game days, but they lack size, like you said. So maybe they have to put him out there at some point. Maybe they have to have him active, at least, especially against the Eagles, like against A.J. Brown. Maybe they have to try different things there. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to, Christian Gonzalez should play almost every snap. So we're going to have ups and downs there. We're going to have rookie moments, growing pains, all that stuff. So that's going to be, a bit of a roller coaster. But, yeah, Jack Jones, I'm not sure. Like, I don't want to speak too much on the legal stuff because I'm not an expert there. But, it does. I would be surprised if they suspended him so soon. Like you said, I think there was someone recently that got suspended after he got arrested earlier this year, but
yeah,
I forget that name. It just happened.
Hassan Haskins running.
Yes, Hassan Haskins. So yeah, he that was based on an arrest earlier this year. So I guess there's a precedent where you can suspend a guy, but like, I feel like the league usually waits until the legal process is more or less complete. And Jack Jones, he pushed back. He's had that one court appearance and he pushed this one that was supposed to be earlier this month all the way into mid-September. So maybe he'll get suspended during the season at some point, but I doubt he'll be suspended in September. I feel like Jack Jones is going to be out there and playing a lot week 1. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's right there on Devontae Smith opening night. That's how I feel. But yeah, maybe a lack of speed here or a lack of size. Sorry, they got speed, but like maybe a lack of size there. But Christian Gonzalez is going to be key to that. Overall, I still like the group, but it's going to be interesting to see how they use guys and whether they still feel Jonathan Jones needs to be on the outside, or if they can go with Gonzalez and Jack Jones. It's going to be interesting to see how they use them.
How about at safety? Again, this one was another position that was kind of chalk. It's Jabril Peppers, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar, and who am I missing? Peppers,
Jalen Mills,
Duggar, and Jalen Mills. Right? It's that kind of that same group it's been they were solid all summer. Another one that just kind of you hope they keep the momentum going.
Yeah, for sure. And like, look, Jalen Mills was a guy that he repped a lot with the twos, but like feels like he's starting to make plays when he was out there in the preseason. So like, I expect all 4 safeties to be out there, a good amount, rotating and playing different roles. And so, yeah, no, that's a group you feel good about. And like, look, safety not the most exciting position, not necessarily the most important position on the field, but when you're really deep at that group, you feel pretty good about, especially their ability to limit big plays. I feel like that was the thing that was Devin McCourty's calling card here. So hopefully that's the thing that they can replace well, with Devin McCourty gone, is that they limit the big plays down the field. That's what I'm hoping for. And maybe hopefully they can find someone that can cover tight ends and cover running backs in the passing game. They've always had trouble with that.
I'm
historically.
hoping Mills.
Yeah, it feels like that could be Jalen Mills. It should be Jalen Mills. He plays over the middle a lot. He did it in the preseason. So that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, no, that's a group you got to feel good about.
And then special teams, keeping 2 rookies, kicker, punter. It's been, assuming nothing changes, the last time a team had a rookie kicker and punter in week 1 was the 2015 Miami Dolphins. The last time a team had a rookie kicker and punter play at least 10 games, both over the course of a single season, was the 2018 Raiders. So this isn't something you see every day. There's going to be growing pains again, like we said with Gonzalez, but this is what it always should have been. This should have been the group. You drafted them, you go with them.
Yeah, no, it is a bit of a departure for Bill Belichick to be all in on Chad Ryland, particularly because they traded Nick Folk. So like now they don't really have that veteran safety net behind the rookie. So it's a little interesting that he finally landed on a kid that he wants to go with, because this has been sort of the theme over the last few years with Justin Rohrwasser, Quinn Nordine, and these guys that they brought in. Like, they big legs, but not necessarily the most accurate or consistent guys. So like, but I feel like Bill feels that he can coach them up, he can develop them into better kickers, and a lot of that is on Cam McCord's plate, by the way. Like he's been working a lot with the kicking specialists now that Joe Judge is now the de facto special teams coordinator. So if Ryland doesn't work out, we know who to blame, Barth. But yeah, like Chad Ryland, I'm intrigued because now you feel like you can line up for a 50-55 yard field goal and feel decent about your chances. Like with Nick Folk, you pretty much had no chance. So I liked Nick Folk. He was great here. He had a shockingly good 4-year run as for a guy that was out of the league for a year before he came here. But I feel like he had run his course, and like it was obvious that they were going to go with Chad Ryland at some point. So it's interesting to me that they're all in on Chad Ryland with no real backup plan there. Punter is a little different because yes, Bryce Baringer won the job. He's going to be the guy, but there's Corliss Waitman right there in the practice squad. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see games where they have 2 punters on the active roster because they don't feel great about Baringer. Like we'll see how it goes for him in week 1 against the Eagles, and then go from there, I suppose. But yeah, it's interesting that they kept the backup plan at punter.
So there you have it, 53-man roster. Matt and I will be back. So we're going to do another pod next week. We'll preview the Eagles game. But before that, Monday night, the annual Patriots Labor Day preview show.
Yes.
We're 6 to 8, right? Because we were 8 to 10 last year.
6 to 8, working on Labor Day, a tradition like no other for us.
6 to 8. Well, it's week 1. 6 to 8 on, not a podcast. We'll podcast it, but live 98.5 The Sports Hub. We'll take your calls. We'll break down the whole thing, the roster, the schedule, all of it. It's become kind of this fun tradition, the 3rd annual. So we will talk to you then. And then, yeah, we'll be back in podcast form next week to preview Patriots Eagles. So, Matt, I know I said like 30, 35 minutes when we hopped on here. We're pushing 45. So Matt's got some stuff coming on Mac Jones and the offensive line. I know he wants to get back to writing, so be sure to check that out. 98.5thesportshub.com. I will have for next week rookie expectations and bold predictions. Bold predictions for the Patriots upcoming season. So check those out.
Quick till the next one. Sports Hub Underground. New episode out right now. We talk plenty of Patriots on that one, so check that out. Me and Ty Anderson.
Until the next one, for Matt Dolloff, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.